really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those...
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Country Roads Webcast, brought to you by Trio 4 Productions. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Cruz, here this time to recap WVU's second game of the season as they take down the Youngstown State Penguins 52-17. It was the home opener of the WVU Football 2018 season. Rainy day, but the Mountaineers managed to remain pretty efficient despite the nasty conditions out there. Starters-wise, offensively, you had Alex Sinkfield making his first start, and Coach Holgerson said that was due to the play that was called on offense. And Chase Barrett actually replaced Joe Brown as a starter at right guard, but both of them split time. They're trying to get Joe Brown more acclimated to conditioning-wise and better endurance before they play him a lot. They felt like they played him a little bit too much in that first game, kind of wore him down, so brought Chase Barrett in as the starter this time and split series with him a lot. Other than that, your starters remain the same on offense. Defensive-wise, the starters, the only change was at Sam linebacker, of course, where Charlie Benton was injured, and a lot of people figured Tony Gibson might have a trick up his sleeve on that one, and he did, surprisingly, moving backup bandit safety Giovanni Stewart down to the position to be the starter, and he saw most of the reps there. Stewart's a bit undersized, about 5'8", 195, but they mentioned that he played, football at one of the highest levels in Texas and played that linebacker spot and was on that defensive line even for them a lot. So he can be physical and he's very athletic and makes up for kind of his lack of size. And he looks pretty good there, especially for only having 3 or 4 days to practice at the position. And Tony Gibson said they ran a lot of just their base defense, just trying to get him used to it, and didn't really do anything except just kind of kept it vanilla defensively. So that was the only change with the defensive starters. And going forward, you look for Giovanni Stewart to probably be the guy there, albeit splitting reps with Shea Campbell and Exery Lowe. Well, that being said, not too many changes with the starters. Let's get into this game summary. WVU got the ball first, and on that first drive, they actually played 3 out of their 4 running backs. I mentioned Sinkfield got the start, and then Petaway came in, and Lady Brown actually saw action on the drive too. So right away in the Mountaineers' first drive, you see 3 of the 4 running backs getting playing time. And then you also see multiple receivers. You see William Crest get in there, Dominique Maiden, T.J. Simmons. So from the very beginning, you see West Virginia was trying to get a lot of players some playing time in this game. After moving the ball on that first drive, they got down past midfield and got into Youngstown State territory, inside their 40-yard line, I believe it was. Will Greer threw his first interception of the season, unfortunately, on a 3rd down play. He was kind of trying to force the issue a little bit there. Youngstown State came out and they were playing back, cover 4, quarters coverage, and playing far off, and basically saying, West Virginia, we're going to see if y'all are patient enough to beat us. We're not going to give up the big play. Y'all are going to have to be patient. And West Virginia showed that they could do that indeed, as their play calling was very patient. They trusted their run game, a lot of short, quick passes, and took what the defense was giving them, and that was good to see from Spavital and from Will Greer. That was kind of the issue that they worked on him with all this offseason, was just being patient, taking what the defense gives you, and being more efficient, and not having to make the big play every time, and just be more of a game manager. And, when that big play's there, just hit it then, but don't try and force the issue. And on that first drive, Holgerson mentioned he kind of was trying to do that, force the ball downfield a little bit. But after that first drive, he really calmed down and was near perfect for the rest of this game. And I was glad to see the run game and the way it worked out, because that was one of the things I said going into this game, was the run was probably was what was going to be available to us, and see how we did with that. And we didn't care to run into a light box all day. They were going to play 5 in the box. We were just going to keep handing it off, and ran for nearly 300 yards on them right at it. So that's good to see, and the running backs performed well. And I think the running game's come a long way in this offseason and looks improved. The opening drive for the Mountaineer defense saw Kenny Bigelow pick up right where he left off after the first game of the season. He had that great game. He had a tackle for loss in the Mountaineer defense's first drive of this game as well. So he looks great on that defensive line, and Jabril Robinson made plays as well, and so did Dante Steele, and this defensive line still looking pretty impressive, albeit 2 games in against kind of what some people would say is weaker offenses, but the defensive line I think still looks pretty great. The WVU's second offensive drive actually started on their own 1-yard line, and as I mentioned, right guard Joe Brown came in on that series as him and Chase Barrett kind of alternated series in this game, and both got to see a lot of playing time. Kenny McCoy got in on this drive as well, so you've seen all 4 running backs play within West Virginia's first 2 drives, and in the first quarter, all 4 running backs got playing time. They marched down the field, mainly using the run game. As I mentioned, they trusted the run game a lot in this one. Marched right down the field for a 99-yard drive, and it was capped off by a 9-yard touchdown run by Alex Sinkfield off the right side around the end there. And that was Alex Sinkfield's first career rushing touchdown and the Mountaineers' first touchdown of the game, putting them up 7-0 early in the first quarter in this one. The Mountaineer defense would then force Youngstown State to punt again, aided by the first career tackle for a loss by grad transfer defensive end Jabril Robinson, who I mentioned had a pretty strong game in this one, getting that first tackle for a loss, and he looked good. He played the most snaps on the defensive line actually in game 1. A lot of people didn't realize. They rotated him in and out so much. I think he played 37 snaps in the first game against Tennessee, and that was the most by any one defensive lineman. So you see that these guys can really rotate and be a lot of multiple on those looks on the defensive line, and Jabril Robinson played good in this game, getting his first TFL in that second defensive series. And the Mountaineers led 7-0 at the end of the first quarter. After the first quarter, following the end of it, we've seen the 1988 West Virginia Mountaineer football team be honored. Greatest team in school history probably, arguably, but definitely up there. 11-0, perfect season. Played Notre Dame for the national championship. Major Harris, Don Nealon, all those guys, just a great team, and arguably, like I said, the best team in Mountaineer history, so it was great to see them get recognized after the first quarter of that one, as this is the 30th anniversary of that team, and they were all there. Most of them were there in attendance, rather, and like I said, great to see them recognized and getting the recognition that they deserve. The beginning of the second quarter would see the Mountaineers cap off a drive that they had started to end the first quarter, and they capped this one off with an 11-yard pass from Will Greer to Gary Jennings to put the Mountaineers up 14-0, and it was Gary Jennings' second touchdown catch of the season, effectively doubling his touchdown reception total from last season already in Game 2. His last season he had 97 catches but only 1 touchdown, and it was only the beginning for Gary Jennings' day, as we'll get into here in a bit. Then the Youngstown State offense would actually answer the West Virginia score with one of their own and put together a drive which saw the Mountaineer defense commit 2 pass interference penalties that helped keep that drive going for Youngstown State. And they got into the end zone on a 4-yard touchdown pass on 3rd and goal, making the game 14-7 West Virginia lead. The following drive for the West Virginia offense saw Alex Sinkfield go down with an apparent ankle injury, which I hated to see. He was having a good game, and ankle injuries can really hurt a player like him that's used his quickness and explosiveness. So hopefully he'll be all right. In the post-game press conference, Dana Holgerson said he'll be fine. He's day-to-day, so we'll see where that goes. But he would knock him out for the rest of this game. And the drive would also end in the first punt for the Mountaineers of the game. Then the Mountaineer defense would do the same and force Youngstown State to punt as well after a brief drive they put together. And then following the punts by both teams, the Mountaineer offense would put together a drive and add one more score before the half as Will Greer hit another TD pass to Gary Jennings, this one from 24 yards into the right corner of the end zone, to put the Mountaineers up 21-7 at the break. Youngstown State deferred on the opening coin toss, so they did get the ball to start the second half. And in the beginning of that second half, the Mountaineer defense forced a 3-and-out to try and get things rolling in the third quarter. And yet again, we go on to see another strong third quarter by the Mountaineers, which is looking like their best quarter so far this season. They've come out in Game 1 and now in Game 2 and looked really strong and put a lot of points on the board in these third quarters. The first drive of the third quarter only took 4 plays, and it would see Gary Jennings catch his 3rd touchdown of the game from Will Greer, this time a 33-yard hookup, and it stretched the WVU lead to 28-7 early in that third quarter of play. Gary Jennings' 3rd touchdown of the game, so tripled his touchdown catches total from last year in just 1 game, and now sits at 4 touchdowns in 2 games on this year. And looking like maybe the defenses are keen on David Seals after that season he had last year, and the roles may have kind of flipped now, and Gary Jennings is looking like the touchdown maker so far this season. Youngstown State would answer that quick Mountaineer touchdown drive with a drive of their own. It was buoyed by a long pass play that they got on a double move. Josh Norwood, he's an aggressive corner, and he was jumping those routes, and I think Youngstown State picked up on that, and they ran a pump and go. The guy faked like he was running a stop route, pump fake, and then went deep and caught a pass over Josh Norwood. And that was a receiver for Youngstown State, Zach Farrar, who was actually formerly at Oklahoma, so he's a talented player, and he showed that in this game. And then that would lead to another TD run by a 13-yard run by their running back, Tevin McCaster, and that would make the lead 28-14 here in the third quarter. The Mountaineers would get the ball back and then answer that TD with one of their own. That included a fourth down conversion coming on an outstanding catch by Marcus Sims. The snap was kind of low. Will Greer had to get down and get it, and when he did, he knew he had man-to-man coverage with the blitz on the play. Threw it up to Marcus Sims. Marcus Sims was interfered with on the play, a pass interference penalty. Nonetheless, still made a terrific grab and put the Mountaineers in a goal-to-go situation. And then that drive would be ended by another player getting his first career touchdown in Letty Brown as he ran it in from 1 yard out. And that was fitting because earlier on the drive, he actually had a 39-yard touchdown run that would have been his first career touchdown run that looked impressive. He broke a tackle and then outran people to the end zone. But that was called back due to a holding penalty. So it was good to see Jake Spavital still get him that ball near that end zone and get that first career touchdown nonetheless, and put the Mountaineer lead up to 35-14. On the ensuing Youngstown State drive, the Mountaineer defense would cause the first turnover of the season as Drayvon Askew Henry read the quarterback, jumped the route, and got an interception on the sideline to get that ball back to the Mountaineer offense right away. And the Mountaineer offense would take advantage of the turnover, taking only 2 plays to get into the end zone, and they were both runs by Kennedy McCoy, a 26-yarder down to the 8, and then an 8-yarder to put it into the end zone and make the lead 42-14 Mountaineers. Then Youngstown State would use yet another double move on their next drive, this time faking a slant and going deep to Zach Farrar again to get into scoring position. But the Mountaineer defense would tighten up from there, forcing them into a field goal, making the score 42-17 WVU. And that's where the score would remain to end the third quarter. At the start of the fourth quarter, the WVU offense would yet again need only 2 plays to produce a scoring drive and get a touchdown, as Will Greer threw his 4th touchdown pass of the game. This time he hit Dominique Maiden, a play-action pass, hit Dominique Maiden on a slant. Maiden cut back to the outside to the sideline, beat everybody to the end zone for a 40-yard touchdown. And that made Maiden the 3rd WVU player on the day to get his first career touchdown in this game, as that was his first touchdown as a Mountaineer, and the players were really excited celebrating with him. Actually ended up getting a penalty, but when you got a lead that big, that's all right, because the guys were really excited to see Dominic Maiden get his first touchdown. He's a guy that's well liked on the team, and Coach Elverson said, he harped on him a little bit about it, but he could understand. But he said, if that's a close game or somewhere where it matters, he said the person that gets that penalty is going to wish they'd never been born. But that's good to hear from your coach, is that he's got some discipline going on. But it's understandable in this type of situation, I think. And that put the WVU lead up to 49-17 here in this fourth quarter. Then after forcing a Youngstown State punt on the next drive, the Mountaineer fans got to see their first glimpse of backup quarterback Jack Allison as he checked into the game to replace Will Greer. And despite a couple misfires, Jack may have been, had some nerves. He hasn't played football in quite a while, and so that may have caused a couple of these overthrows that he had in there, but he did end up completing a pass to Javani Haskins and led the Mountaineers down the field, aided by a very tough running by true freshman running back Letty Brown, who we'll talk more about later, but he really had a good game and helped the Mountaineers get down the field on this drive. And on this drive they scored yet again, but this time a field goal by Evan Staley from 30 yards out, making it 52-17 WVU, and that would be the final score of this game as the Mountaineers moved to 2-0 with the 52-17 win over Youngstown State in the home opener. Some stats from this game individually. Will Greer, I mentioned, had the 1 interception early, but was near perfect from then on out. The Mountaineers trusted the run game as he only threw 26 passes, but he was very efficient in those, going 21 of 26 for 332 yards and 4 touchdowns, so giving him 9 touchdowns in 2 games now. Rushing-wise, Letty Brown, mentioned him a little bit earlier. He actually had his first career 100-yard rushing game, went over 100 yards on the possession when the Mountaineers put Jack Allison in, and he did it at only 15 carries, showing 15 carries for 115 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. So it was his first career 100-yard rushing game, as well as WVU's first 100-yard rusher on this young 2018 season. Martell Pettaway also had a good game. He got banged up a little bit there at the end and went out for the rest of it, but he's fine. They just took precautions and kept him out at the end there, but he showed 12 carries for 77 yards, as Kennedy McCoy also showed 11 carries for 79 yards and the touchdown. And Alex Sinkfield, before the injury, had 5 carries for 27 yards and, of course, the early touchdown. So 3 rushing touchdowns from the Mountaineers in this one. That's good to see, considering in the first game against Tennessee they did not have any rushing touchdowns, and you've seen 3 different running backs getting into the end zone on this one, so that's a positive. Receiving-wise, Marcus Sims had arguably his best game as a Mountaineer yet. And, it wasn't deep balls, as Youngstown State wasn't really giving them up. It was a lot of stop routes, slant routes, curls, things like that. And Marcus Sims looked really good. I mentioned he had that one spectacular catch on that 4th down conversion where he was interfered with and still made the play. And in the game, he showed 8 catches for 119 yards. Gary Jennings, another stellar outing for him. He's just Mr. Consistency. And he had 6 catches for 97 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dominic Maiden, I mentioned, had the 1 catch for the 40-yard touchdown. David Seals, they were kind of keying on him. He had a couple catches early, but that's all that he had, and 2 catches for 33 yards. And that's good to see when you got a guy that was a Blitnikoff finalist last year, and they're keying on him, and then you have these other receivers that can step up and make plays. This offense just has a lot of weapons, and it's going to be hard to stop, especially when you're looking at it where your Blitnikoff finalist is held to only 2 catches for under 50 yards. And your quarterback still goes over 300 yards, and you still put up a lot of offense and put up 52 points. So this offense is multiple, and they don't have to rely on any one guy, and you can't just key on any one player and hope to stop this offense. And then also T.J. Simmons had 2 catches for 23 yards himself. Defensively, some individual statistics. David Long with the 10 tackles in this one and 2 tackles for a loss. So another big performance from David Long, as you've come to expect from him. Arguably the best linebacker in the country, definitely best linebacker in the Big 12 to me. And then Toyus Avery, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss. Josh Norwood at corner, got beat a couple times in the double move, but he's really aggressive, and I really like what I'm seeing from him at corner, and I think he's only going to get better. And he showed 5 tackles and 1 tackle for a loss. Kenny Robinson, 3 tackles, a tackle for a loss. Derek Pitts got a lot more playing time in this game. He had 3 tackles and 1 tackle for a loss. Dante Stills, 2 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, and 1 sack. So his first tackle for a loss as a Mountaineer and his first sack as a Mountaineer, and he looked impressive in this game, especially being a true freshman. Javani Stewart mentioned he got to start at that Sam linebacker spot, and he seemed to always be around the ball. I liked what I've seen from him, despite his lack of size there. I think his athleticism and his physicality can make up for that, as he showed 2 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss. Kenny Bigelow with the 1 tackle for a loss, and of course Drayvon Askew Henry with the interception in this game. Some team statistics from this game. Rushing yards, WVU was able to hold Youngstown State to 136 while picking up 298 themselves, so right at 300 there. Pass yards, Youngstown State had 157 versus West Virginia's 336. Total yards, they held Youngstown State under 300 at 293, and West Virginia was able to roll up 625 yards. And I mentioned on the last recap show that the Mountaineers put up 8.1 yards per play in their opening game, which was a big number because that is what the Oklahoma Sooners averaged last year, that set the NCAA record for a points per play average for a season. And not only did the Mountaineers match that this game, albeit against Youngstown State, they raised that another 0.2 to 8.3 yards per play in this game. So if the Mountaineers should keep up that pace, that's going to be really great for this season, and that's very impressive so far. That would put their average right now at 8.2, so they're actually topping what Oklahoma did last year thus far, and hopefully they can keep up that pace. Penalties is a thing that really hurt West Virginia in this game, and they need to get cleaned up. After having only 4 penalties in the first game against Tennessee and looking really good, a lot of mental mistakes in this one, which led to 12 penalties for a total of 114 yards. You can credit it maybe to it being Youngstown State, and it's easier to make mental mistakes in a game like that, I guess, when you're playing one of these FCS teams. Nobody really likes this game because it's an unwinnable situation. Either either you don't win by enough, or if you lose, then of course you lost to an FCS. But no matter what you do, it's always, well, you could have done this or that against this FCS team. But you definitely want to see the mental mistakes cleaned up when it comes to the penalties, because the past few years West Virginia's been one of the most penalized teams in the Big 12, if not the most. And that's one thing that Coach Holgorsen tried to focus on this season when he talked about efficiency, was also penalties, and he did get those down. And they did that very well in the first game against Tennessee, having only 4. But speed bump in this game, and hopefully it's an aberration, and they get back on track to what they were doing against Tennessee and clean up those mental mistakes and don't have as many penalties going forward, because they can't have that. Tackles for a loss, West Virginia had 12 in the first game against Tennessee, and they actually end up with 9 in this one. So that defense is looking very impressive as far as getting into the backfield, especially that defensive line, as they have 21 tackles for a loss now in the 2 games, which is on pace to possibly break the school record at West Virginia, and definitely break the record of how many tackles for a loss under Dana Holgorsen and Tony Gibson. Talking about those tackles for a loss, the WVU defense right now is tied at 6th in the country, actually, with averaging the 10.5 tackles for a loss per game. And also 14 different Mountaineer players have partaken in those tackles for a loss, either a half tackle for a loss or a whole. So that's good to see. You got 14 guys getting in on 10.5 tackles for a loss on average a game. And, like I said, 21 total and 14 different players making those 21. So that's good. That's good to see, is a variety of guys getting around the ball. And this defense looks like they really fly the ball and appear to be fast. And, we'll see where they are going forward, as the competition is going to get a lot tougher from here on out. Also, the Mountaineer defense is ranked number 29 in the country right now in total defense, giving up an average of only 297 yards a game. Yes, it's against Tennessee and Youngstown State, 2 lesser offenses than what they're going to face from here on out in the season, but it's still good to see that they're performing in those games the way that they should. And I think they've been a pleasant surprise for some that didn't see this coming. I kind of harped in my previews that this defense isn't going to be the same defense, and you're going to see a lot better play, especially on this D-line, and that's been the case so far. And they've also done a good job keeping opponents out of the end zone, as they rank 31st in the country in scoring defense, giving up only 15.5 points a game right now. And of course, that number is probably going to go up once you get into Big 12 play, but I think that if the Mountaineers can keep close to a top 30, top 40 defense in the country, this can be a really great season for this team with the offense they have. And this defense has come a long way since last year, and hopefully they just continue to improve as the season progresses. Talking about Will Greer, through 2 games, Will Greer shows 9 TD passes and only 14 incompletions, as well as throwing for 761 yards. And so that puts him at a 76% completion rating, very high completion rating, 761 yards in 2 games, 9 touchdowns. Looking good there. You'd like to avoid the interception he had early in this one, but you can't go all season without throwing at least one. So I don't think he'll throw too many this year, but he's been very efficient despite that interception. He's been near perfect in these games, especially in these second halves. Speaking of him in the second halves of these first 2 games, he shows 4 incompletions versus 6 touchdowns. So he has 2 more touchdown passes than he does incompletions in the second half of these games, as well as in the second half of the games, completing 86% of his passes for a total of 444 yards. So he really has been great with his adjustments once he figures out what these defenses are doing. In the second halves, he's come out red hot in both games and really performed near perfect and been very efficient in his play in the second half and overall through the season. I heard in the Big 12 teleconference somebody asked Coach Holgorsen what he likes from Will Greer this season, and his answer simply was everything. And I think that's one of the better ways to sum it up, is you got to like everything that Will Greer's doing so far this season, because he's content if you're going to play a light box like Youngstown State did. Okay, fine, we'll just hand it off, run for 300 yards a game on you. That's cool. And, if you're going to play your safeties and the corners off, give me the underneath throws, I'll take it. And he's really progressed a lot. I think that's the biggest change I've seen from Will this season as opposed to last season, is just taking what the defense gives him more than trying to force the issue and try and go for the big play all the time. And that's very good to see, and it's good to see that he's improved, because he was really great last season and is even better so far this season. Hopefully he keeps it up as the season goes along, as the school tries to push that Heisman candidacy for Will Greer. As far as my players of the game in this one, on offense, could go a few different ways. Mentioned Marcus Sims had his best game of the Mountaineer. Will Greer is always a candidate for that player of the game. Gary Jennings had the 3 touchdowns. But for me, my player of the game on offense is going to have to be Letty Brown, the true freshman running back. We've been a big proponent of him here on the Country Roads webcast since fall camp. We expected that he may end up as a starter. That honor went to Petaway in the first game, but Letty Brown was right there in carries with him in that first game, being one behind. And this game, he led the team in carries with the 15 and is the first 100-yard rusher on the season with 115 yards. And he's just very impressive for a true freshman. I can't remember the last time West Virginia had a back that was physical like this. I've heard people making the comparison that his running style kind of reminds them of Steve Slayton because he's physical, but he also shows a little speed, especially in this past game when he had that 39-yard touchdown run that got called back. He shedded a tackle, then hit past the safeties and ran by them. And I can kind of see that a little bit, but I think that Letty Brown is on a higher level than Slayton was as far as physicality because, Slayton was, he was skinnier when he came here, about 170, 180 or so, and, he ended up getting up close to that 200 range. But Letty Brown is a true freshman, 18 years old, is 6 foot tall, 210 plus pounds. So, and he really, the first tackler doesn't bring Letty Brown down a lot, and if he does, Letty Brown falls forward and gets an extra 1 or 2 yards. You don't see Letty Brown get loss of yards really, and I think going forward, he's really got the makings to me of being a feature back for this offense and maybe being the guy they can carry the load the most. And the good thing is you've got other capable backs in Sinkfield, McCoy, and Petaway that you can always bring fresh legs in late in the game when the defense is worn down and really, close out wins with these running backs. I think I like the fact that Virginia has 4 talented ones, and I think surprisingly enough, the true freshman, Letty Brown, may be the most talented of the bunch and is going to be a big player for West Virginia this season and a big player for West Virginia in the years moving forward, I do believe. Defensive-wise, my player of the game, David Long. What can you say about David Long? He brings it every game. He's so consistent, always around the ball, making plays. 10 tackles in this one, couple tackles for a loss, and he lives in opponent's backfield. He's tough to block. So all in all, it's a good performance as the Mountaineers now sit at 2-0 on the young 2018 WVU football season, and they prepare to take on their first big test and their first real road test in the NC State Wolfpack. And it'll be a good test for this defense to see where they stand, especially in the secondary, as NC State shows a great passing offense led by efficient quarterback in Ryan Finley. The bad news on that side of things, though, is that it's looking like this game may not be played as of now. Hurricane Florence is moving in there to the Carolinas and looking to be a Category 4 by the time it hits. And I don't see, unless that hurricane takes a turn, how this game is played. And so you may actually end up seeing a cancellation of this third game. You don't want to see that for a football game, but there's more important issues than football, especially, people's safety and well-being. And so prayers out there to North Carolina that everybody has a plan there and can be safe during this, if this hurricane does end up hitting there. And if the game does end up getting canceled, we will still bring you another show later in this week, updating you on that and some other West Virginia football news. And hopefully, we'll find out in the next couple of days what the situation is and if the game is going to go on or not. And if it does go on, we'll bring you our weekly preview of Game 3 against NC State coming up later in the week. And you can stay tuned into our Twitter page. Follow that if you haven't already. It's at WVU Country Roads, as we'll be providing updates about this game. And also, we like to live tweet during the West Virginia football games too and provide updates on there. So follow that if you haven't already. And we'll hopefully be able to get you ready for Game 3 against NC State later in the week, or bring you an update about the situation there. That being said, that'll wrap us up on another edition of the Country Roads Webcast, brought to you by Trio 4 Productions. I'm your host, Jordan Cruz. Until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
Are you ready to party? Country Roads.